Howdy YouTube, my name is Max. Are you trying to get out of your parents' house? In this episode, we're going to delve into that. We're not only going to help you get to that spot in life, we're going to show you with a financial model using a spreadsheet how you can check to make sure that you can put this deal together and make it work. So with that out of the way, my name is Max. I am a Twitch streamer on Twitch, www.twitch.tv/max_sense. I also do YouTube, and this video is specifically in response to a viewer that submitted a question, and I'm going to get right into that now. So the viewer asked in his question, my son Kay dreams of moving across the country to Washington State and is actively saving. However, there's more to moving than I think he realizes. Perhaps your guidance could help break down the logical steps to reach his goal while remaining financially secure. Thank you in advance for any help that you can offer. FK. First off, FK, thank you for sending in the question. This is precisely why we are here. Anybody can submit a question to us, and we'll break it down, help them see the money coming in, the money coming out, and help people get real world perspective on what reality is and what it takes to put their goals into motion. So with that out of the way, we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to show you this kind of starting point that we have for this person I'm going to refer to as K. K's current situation is outlined here. Kay is currently earning about $10 an hour, I believe, working in the restaurant industry, pizza restaurants specifically. As I understand it from talking with Dad, get some very basic information. He's working about 40 hours a week. I'm going to have some values in here where we can account for wage growth at the rate of 5% per year. And then I'm going to assume, Kay, that your tax rate is 30%, meaning that for every dollar you earn, $30 go for every dollar you own, 30 cents goes towards your federal withholding, Social Security, Medicare, and these kinds of things, and you get 70 cents on the dollar as your take-home pay. And I'm also going to assume here that you have no monthly expenses in your current situation. As I understand it, you're still under a parent's roof, and you have little to nothing in the way of expenses, and you're saving aggressively to get to your goal, which I applaud. Okay, so part two of this is the move here. And what we're going to do here is, based on a Google search, the Kay lives in Arkansas and wants to live in Washington State up in the Northwest. When I did a Google search, I'm estimating that's about 2,200 miles of driving. I'm assuming that he would do about 400 miles in a given day, and based on the car that I believe he's driving, he would probably get something like 16 miles to the gallon. And then during his travel, he would spend about $20 a day for food and about $100 a day for hotel expenses. Okay? And then his goal to live in the state of Washington, I've got a couple things here. First off, we're going to assume in this initial model that Kay will go 6 months without any wage-paying work. To kind of view this from a rainy day perspective, he may go out there knowing he already has a job, but we're going to factor into the model this variable, which we can change, by the way. We're going to also use a monthly rent of about, based on what I saw online, $1,150. And I'm going to assume here that your monthly food costs would be about $600, while your other costs would be $300. And this is an area where you have to do the research and do your homework, so to speak, to figure out what your monthly expenses are going to be when you move out of the house. I'm also assuming here that you're making a lateral move when you go to the state of Washington. You will continue to make $10 per hour, or start at $10 per hour in your new job in the state of Washington, again working 40 hours per week. And then we're going to try and factor for wage growth, annual raises at a rate of 5%. And then finally, we have a rule here. And what do I mean by that? we are going to establish a ground rule with this that the move will not happen until you have saved up 6 months worth of living expenses at your current job in your current location, so that you can kind of weather a storm and you have a savings to draw upon to kind of get you through this point of transition in your life. Okay, so how are we going to get there? Let's talk about that for a minute. To reach the goal, starting with the current situation, we're going to do a couple of things. First off, we're going to try and work on increasing earning opportunities. And as I understand it, you're already in the process of trying to get promoted to assistant store manager, so I applaud you for that. We're going to eliminate unnecessary expenses, and I don't think this is particularly true of you. As I understand it, you're aggressively saving, and I don't believe you have any big recurring expenses, and this is an area that I would focus. In other words, if you go out once a week with your friends for dinner or something like that, I don't think you need to sacrifice everything in life to get to your goal. But if you had a big recurring expense, you would want to look at ways to minimize that. And by increasing our earnings and eliminating or reducing unnecessary expenses, we would maximize the savings. And then finally, I want to point out the fact that you have a grand opportunity between now and when you make your move to do your research, do your homework, to figure out what is reality as it relates to things like what the rent rate is in the state of Washington and other things like that. And we'll talk more about that as we get further into it. With the future situation where you're in the state of Washington, we're gonna plan ahead, and we're gonna look at ways between now and when we make the move to optimize or improve our chance to earn, possibly with a change to a different company or some other new opportunity. And we're going to continue to watch our expenses, although it's a given that as we move out of the house, out on our own, we're gonna incur some expenses, but we have to do the best we can to mitigate or manage those. So our strategy basically is that we're going to set goals and milestones. And this is important because only with progress of these micro goals will you feel you're getting some headway towards your end goal. And these little victories are important to keep you motivated and keep you on track. So you're going to set the goals and the milestones. You're going to track your progress against those goals, and then when you reach each of those goals, you're going to celebrate in some way to feel good about what you're doing to get to your end goal. Okay, so how are we going to analyze this? We do this with a financial model and a spreadsheet. This is pretty straightforward, and what we're going to do basically is month by month, we're going to look at your monthly income and your expenses and what would your net cash flow be. Are you going to be cash flow positive, meaning you're saving money, or are you going to be cash flow negative, meaning you're at a deficit where you got to find some way to fix something to get back in the plus. And we're going to start with your current situation here in month 10 of 2019. And I've got a simple counter here that will keep ticking these months and years off. And then we're doing a cumulative month or a month counter because this is something we may need later on to establish. As an example, at month 18 is the month where we make the move. Okay, so let's back up here, and we're going to break this these starting assumptions down a little bit, and we're going to get some other information established. So first off, we need to look at the hours worked, and this is important because there's well, I would like to think there's at least a possible opportunity to work some overtime hours, and I want to put that flexibility into the model. So we would have regular hours, and then we would have overtime hours for a total number of hours. So this is regular, and then we have overtime hours, and we have total hours here. So this last field obviously is just going to be the sum of these two. And our regular hours are going to be based upon if this is less than or equal to 40, then it's the same as whatever hours we worked. Otherwise, it's going to be 40 because we worked more than 40 hours. And then if this value here is greater than 40, then we need to take the difference of this minus the regular hours. And otherwise we would put a 0. So this is gonna, if we did this correctly, when we put 45 there, we have 5 hours overtime, 40 regular. If we have 35 hours, now it's showing 35 regular, 0 overtime. So that's working correctly. And for the time being, I'm going to keep you at 40 hours, but just know that we have an opportunity to look at that as something on the backside, as a what-if scenario. And this is the whole reason for the spreadsheet. Why would you even bother to analyze this to that degree? The goal here is when we get to the end and we built the model, we can say, well, what if I worked 50 hours? And we would update that one field, the whole model gets updated, and we know what the end result is. Okay, so with an hourly rate or wage of $10 per hour, we're going to figure out what is our gross weekly pay, and then we're also going to figure out the gross monthly pay. So in the case of the gross weekly, it's our regular hours times our hourly rate, and then we're going to add the overtime times 1.5. So that's time and a half, as we like to say. And that would get us $400. And then our monthly pay is equal to the weekly pay times 52, because there are 52 weeks in a year, and then divided by 12 to get the monthly amount. Okay, so why do we go to the trouble of the 45? So you can see here when I change the 45, I get the 45 hours. It recomputes my gross weekly pay. It recomputes my gross monthly pay. And this will all trickle down in this spreadsheet that we're working on putting together. Okay, so here again, we're assuming 0 for monthly expenses. If you have actual expenses, you'll have to account for those on your own. All right, so let's next figure out, we need to figure out, based on how many miles we're driving, we need to figure out days of travel. So what I'm going to do there is I'm going to use something called a roundup, and I'm going to take the 2273 divided by the 400, and I'm going to put here comma 1, comma 0, I think it is. And what this should do, it will take the division and then round it up to the nearest whole number. So we have 6 days of travel, and then we need to figure out what our costs are for this trip. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add a couple of column rows here. So we have our vehicle, we'll call it driving cost. We have food costs, and we have hotel costs. All right. So the driving costs are going to be equal to the miles we drove divided by the miles we drive per day. No. Correction. Okay. Miles driven divided by our fuel economy, and then multiplied times the gas price per gallon. Okay? Now, I did some research offline here, and you can independently verify what I'm telling you here. But according to what I found online, Arkansas gas price is about $2.71, and Washington gas price was about $3.32, I think it was. So this is Washington gas price. And so we're going to take the average of those two. Since you're going from A to B, we'll just assume the average is the correct amount. So for that, we'll take these two numbers, this plus that, and we'll divide it by 2 for 302 per gallon average fuel cost. So that is now correct. And then we need to take the number of days we had times our food cost per day. And the same is true, 6 days of travel times 100 days, $100 per hotel visit. Okay, so we now know what our total travel costs are. I'm going to copy that for formatting, and then I'm going to do the sum of this to this. Okay, so that trip, if I've made all the correct assumptions, that the drive from Arkansas to Washington would cost you about $1,100. Okay, now we're at the goal stage in our journey here, and we need to look at a couple of things here. Most notably, we're going to have our total total living expenses, which is going to be equal to the sum of these three numbers, the monthly rent through the other costs here. And here again, you'll have to verify this and make sure it's all correct. And then since we already did all the formulas up here, I'm just going to grab this and bring it down. And we're just going to have to change some references here. So I need to use A26, cell A26. So that's now correct. And then we need again A26. And that's still correct. And then we're going to take the regular, let's see, our rate is 2025. And by the way, it's not my intention to lose you in the weeds on the spreadsheet aspects of this. What I'm trying to show you is, if we take a little time to set up a spreadsheet like this, we can go through a lot of scenarios to see, well, what if I can cut my travel cost in half? Or what if I can find a Super 8 motel for $40 instead of $100? And we can change that one little input value, and it will recalculate the whole scenario for us. Okay, so let's do a quick check here. We'll take this up to 45. It's computing the overtime correctly. Still correct. So we're all good here. And we know from having done this earlier that 400 and 1733 are correct. And that's still what we have here. Okay. Important point I need to bring to your attention here, Kay. Assuming I have all these expenses correct, $1,150 for monthly rent, $600 for food, and $300 for other costs, your total living expenses are going to be $2,050. Okay? And assuming you start at $10 an hour, working 40 hours per week, your gross monthly pay, that's before taxes, is $1,733. So you're already in the negative. And this is something you'll have to figure out as you're doing your homework over the next 6 or 12 months. How do I overcome this issue? One easy fix might be, and let's just go ahead and put this in here. What if instead of paying $1,150 in rent, I had a roommate and we split it 50-50? Not sure what happened there. Plus $1,150 divided by 2. It is something's going wrong with my formula. Let's just type it in manually. Okay, so $5,750. Now we have total living expenses $1,475, and we have gross monthly pay of $1,733. However, that's gross monthly pay. That's before taxes, and that may still not be quite enough to overcome that gap. All right, I think I have everything that I want here, and now we can work on getting into the model. All right, so let's, I've got some old information here that I need to clear out. All right, so our gross monthly income that we just calculated. This is your current situation. It's going to be 1733.33 per month, and our net monthly income is going to be that amount times parentheses 1 minus the tax rate, your tax rate right here, which comes out to 1213.33. We have monthly expenses of 0, but I'm going to go ahead and reference that over. And what this means is my savings is my income, 1213, minus my expenses for 1213.33 in the bank. Okay? And we're going to track the total savings in this column here. So let's take this and make a copy. Oh, we've got some references we need to clean up here real quick. This one. So these dollar signs I'm putting into the cell formulas. What it does is it keeps the reference from sliding when I copy the values down. And I think we still have an issue there. Yeah, right here. Okay. So let's do a quick check. We still got the gross monthly income. We have the net monthly income. We have the expenses, and our net our monthly savings is 1213. The only difference is we got to now take what we had saved the previous month and add it to the new month. So we're getting a cumulative savings amount. Okay? So right off the bat, one thing I want you to be encouraged about is the fact that your savings rate is very high, assuming I put in all the right assumptions here. And you have potential to put away, I'm going to say something on the order of 14 to 15,000 a year based on 1213 times 12. So that's great. And you can continue to make that a bigger amount by increasing your earning or decreasing your expense or some combination thereof. So this is the good news thus far. Okay, the other thing we need to do is we need to account for this. We talked about our wage growth. Okay, I'm going to assume at the start of every year that you get a 5% increase in pay. In January of every year, you get a 5% increase in pay. It may not occur exactly on January, but we've got to put it somewhere. So that's how we're gonna figure this into the equation. All right, so we're gonna say right here, we're gonna say if the month is equal to 1, then I want to take the current gross times parentheses 1 plus that percentage. Otherwise, we're going to just stay at the same rate of pay. So let's copy this down and make sure it worked. And it didn't. Okay. If A7 is equal to 1, oh, I know what's going on. We gotta do this again with the dollar sign. Okay, so we get to month 1 right here, month 1. We got our 5% increase in pay. We're up to 1820, and when we get down here to month 1 of 21, then we're up to 1911. Okay, so we're getting our increases in pay. So this all looks pretty good. Now, here again, if you establish that you have, as an example, a $250 car payment that you're obligated to help pay, or you are just bought a car or whatever, when I put that $250 in here, I'm immediately going to get my whole model updated. All right, and then similarly, if I start at a rate of $11 an hour, my gross and monthly, my gross weekly, gross monthly pay will increase. So will my net income and all this kind of stuff. All right, so we're just gonna keep everything where I had it initially. I just want you to see that that's why we're going to the trouble of building a spreadsheet. Okay, so we established here that we had a travel cost of $11.48, and we have a monthly living expense. I should call this monthly. Monthly living expense, okay? And what we said previously was our rule was no sooner than the point where we have 6 months in living expenses would we make our move. Okay, so we're going to copy this for format down here. And I'm going to say here amount required before move. And that amount is going to be equal to my travel costs right here, plus this number, which we may change later, times my monthly living expense. Okay? And what this is telling me is that I have to have $9,998 before I'm able to move. And the reason that I'm doing this is I don't want you to go with $20 in your back pocket and then 3 days in, after you get to Washington, you're short on money, you don't have enough money to get by, and you're driving back to Arkansas before you really even got a chance to get your feet on the ground. So this cash reserve is going to be key for you. And I would make a case here that 6 months is the minimum amount you ought to use, and you should consider 9 or even 12 months. And when we do this, when we update that, this is all going to update for us automatically. Okay? So I'm going to, for the time being, we're going to stick with the 6 and move forward. So the key point here being when we have $9,998 in the bank, we're allowed to move to Washington, which would be right here. Okay? But when I change that variable, it may be necessary that it would be later down here or sooner up here. So I'm going to build in some logic here in this spreadsheet where every time I change those numbers, the logic will automatically manage for me when these things happen, and the triggers and switches that will then control, am I making the monthly income at my current location versus the future location, and this kind of thing. And you'll see this as we get further into it. So we do these this logic through switches, if you will. So we're going to say here that we're going to call this the move test. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if this amount here is greater than or equal to our threshold amount, which was this right here, then we're going to put a 1, otherwise we're going to put a 0. Okay? And then we'll have to add the dollar signs in there, which is this guy right here. And we'll copy this down. And you'll see that when we exceed the $9,998, the switch says it's now a number 1. Okay? The question is, we have all these ones in here, so this kind of represents the move day or past the move day. What I really want to know is when is the month we move. So we'll call this move month. And what I'll do is I'll start with a 0 and I'll say if well, we need an and statement now. So if I can't even type. If parentheses and. So if that is a 0, if that equals 0, and this is equal to a 1, then that's basically the first time we had a 1. So we'd put a 1 or a 0. I think it wants another bracket. Oh, my bad there. Right here we need a bracket. Okay, now we're going to copy this down. And so with this column here, the one called move month, the first time we reach this threshold, and only that time, we'll have a 1 here, and this will help us to get this logic working the way we need it to work. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another switch, and I'm going to call this still in Arkansas. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say here, if that's equal to a 0, then I have a 1, otherwise I have a 0. And basically, if I haven't satisfied the requirement of the move test, I haven't moved, therefore I'm still in Arkansas. And conversely, there will be another switch here where I'm going to say now in Washington. Excuse me. So if I'm not in Arkansas, I must be in Washington. So what I'm going to basically do is I'm going to say here plus if that is equal to a 1, then I need a 0. Otherwise, I need a 1. And I'm going to copy this down. And you'll see why I have these switches in here. This is so I don't have to manually change income and outcome and all this. Income and expenses and all this kind of thing based on am I here, am I there? It's just going to automatically know how to do it. Okay? Similarly, we said in the start of this exercise, we're making an assumption here that we're going to go 6 months without work. Okay? So we're going to add a column here, and we're going to call it working in Washington. But we're going to need another column first. So I'm going to call this the work test. I'm going to start with a 0, and I'm going to do a cumulative here where I can add these up. Okay. So the first month when I get to Washington, it's going to put a 1, the second month in Washington, the third month in Washington, so on and so forth. Okay, and this is important because based on this assumption we had in this spreadsheet here, when we get to month 6, or through month 6, I should say, we are going to have no income, and that's going to be used to figure out when to turn the switches for the money on and off. Okay? So what I'm going to say here is I'm going to say if this number is greater than the 6, then we're going to put a 1. Otherwise, we're going to have a 0. Okay? Oh, we have to do that $ thing again. Okay, so we arrive in Washington. It's the first month there. We don't have a job. Second month, so on and so forth. But in month 7 in Washington, we do have a job. So now the switch is on, which is what it needs to be. Okay. Now, based on this, we have another thing we can do here with this switch. We can manage the expenses in Arkansas. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say, we're going to take this whole thing that we calculated before, and we're going to multiply it times this switch. And this is the reason we use zeros and ones, or one of the reasons. Okay. Oh, I think it's angry at me because, let's see, Alt Edit Undo. Is that a circular reference? I think it's telling me that's a circular reference. Okay, no worries. What we're gonna do is we are now going to well, I'm not going to do that yet. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to make this is now our new Arkansas calculation. Okay, so I'm going to say that this is equal to the switch times the gross monthly income amount, which is right here. Okay, and then we should be able to go grab this guy and copy it. No, that didn't work. Oops. What I'm trying to do is save a little time here. Now with that $sign in there, it should copy. Okay, so that looks good. Our moving expense is going to be this switch times the moving costs. And our monthly expense is going to be the Arkansas switch times the Arkansas monthly expense. Okay? So now our savings are equal to the income minus the moving cost minus our monthly expenses. All right, so our cash balance starts out at the 1213, and then let's grab this. You know what? There's probably going to be something we need to check our $signs here. That one should be okay. This one's not. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to copy these values down. And you can see here that I'm only earning my Arkansas income when I'm in Arkansas. And I'm only spending the moving expense when I leave Arkansas. And it doesn't show here. For visual sake, I'm going to put $1 here in my Arkansas monthly expenses. So you can see I'm only spending the Arkansas monthly expenses when I'm in Arkansas, and then when I move, they're gone. Okay, and it's computing my monthly savings based on what I earned and what I spent. The only thing we need to update here is we need to do our cumulative cash balance. And you can see here the money building up during the time that we're in Arkansas. Okay? All right. So we have everything we need here, except we now need to account for the earnings in our new job. So what I want to do now is I'm gonna add a column here. Actually, I'm going to add about 6 columns. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these same column headings over. Now this will be where we figure the Washington scenario. Okay. Okay. So what I think I want to do in the interest of keeping this kind of simple is I'm going to let's change this. That's already good. What I'm going to do, that's just that's math and that's math. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this again. So I don't have to recreate the wheel here. What I'm going to basically do is I'm going to start the earning table, if you will, for Washington the same day as I start the earning table for Arkansas. And the purpose of doing that is so that I don't have to rebuild all these formulas all over again. The thing that we have to change here is I need to see where the actual corrected numbers are. So my monthly is going to be this F27. Okay, so this is F27, and then this here, I've got the that's the percentage amount. So here it was the A7, and down here this is our incremental wages. We need A27. Wait, that's not right. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, that's the tax rate. Okay, this is our tax rate. So we don't need to make a correction to that because I'm going to assume you don't need to make a change with your net income calculation just with the move. I'm going to assume that you stay equal. I don't want to get it too complex. Okay, so now we have our monthly expenses, which were down here. That's going to be this F21. Monthly living expenses, F21. Okay, and this is what I was showing you before, Kay. You're cash flow negative. With the amount of money that we're making, assuming we're still making $10 an hour, and with the amount of money we're spending, assuming we're spending this $14.75, we're in the hole $260. Okay, this is going to be a problem for us. The good news is we're seeing it now, and we can work through some scenarios of what kinds of things we could do to resolve this issue. As an example, can we seek some kind of special training or get a better job in Washington? Maybe the cost of living justifies a higher rate of pay in Washington than it does in Arkansas. Maybe rent is not as much as I thought it was. Maybe food is not as much as I thought it was. But the point is, we're going to have to work through this issue and resolve this, because no matter how much money you take to the state of Washington with you, if you're cash flow negative from day one, you have a problem that has to be resolved. And best to figure this out before the move instead of after. Okay? So, yeah, so we don't really need this this total savings here, because we're going to calculate that elsewhere. All right. So if we did this correctly, we should see the incremental wage bumps for the cost of living adjustment, and it's not working. Okay, let's see what's going on here. Oh, we had a different formula here. Okay, so that's this A7. So let's copy this guy over here. And it was actually based on F27. So F27. We're going to copy this down. And so now something's messed up. Okay, I'm going to type this by hand, see if that resolves it. Okay, so we're going to say if this number over here is equal to a 1, that means we get the raise. Therefore, we need to take this current pay times 1 plus the increase in pay, which is this right here. Otherwise, we're going to take what we were already making. Oh, I left a bracket off again. Okay, now I gotta fix this this dollar sign again. And with any luck, we got this fixed. We do. Okay, so right here, it jumps from 1733 to 1820 in month 1. So that's now working properly. Okay? And I want to do a quick check here. So if I change this rate to $11, this went up, and so do these. That, by the way, may be a key thing to resolve in your deficit, your Washington deficit, K, when you get to the new location. Okay. Here's another thing it shows us is even though we start in a deficit, if we get our 5% annual increase in pay, the deficit is going to shrink, and eventually, if we work long enough, we'll be back in the plus. But I would guess by then that our cash reserves might be exhausted. Okay, so we're back over here, and you'll recall that this is only accounting for the income and expenses from the first location, the current location, Arkansas. However, the way I've done this is I now can add. I can add. Oops. I can add. Uh, well, so what I'm gonna do based on let's come in here real quick. Arkansas. I'm gonna copy this in here so I don't get confused and put the wrong thing. And then we'll come in over here. And now this is Washington. Okay, so we don't get them mixed up. And then we're gonna call this. This is our. We'll call this overall. Okay, and so what I'm going to do using these switches is I'm going to say that my gross income is equal to the Arkansas income times the Arkansas switch plus the Washington income times the Washington switch. And because one of those is a 1 and one of those is a 0, it's only going to take one of the income values. Okay? And similarly, I'm going to say my overall net monthly income is equal to the Arkansas switch times the Arkansas net plus the Washington switch times the Washington net. And then my moving expense is still good. I don't need to mess with this one. We've already got it covered. Okay. And now my monthly expenses are the Arkansas switch times the Arkansas not moving expenses, monthly expenses, and then plus the Washington switch times Washington expenses. And my overall monthly savings is equal to my net minus my moving expense minus my monthly expense. And then this is still that. And we can now copy this. And assuming we haven't made any mistakes, and we have, something's wrong with this switch. Oh, no. Oh, this is correct. We need to fix one thing in here, though. You'll remember when we got to Washington, we determined that some number of months we would be without pay. And because of that, we have these zeros here. Okay, what we didn't do is we eliminated the gross pay, but we didn't eliminate the net pay, which is problematic. So we got to get this fixed. Okay, so we're only going to earn in Washington if this number is greater than that number. Okay, comma 1, comma 0. Oh. Okay, so we're only going to earn in Washington after we get to Washington and after we wait the requisite number of 6 months, which we defined here. Okay, so this is going to be my switch that's going to allow me to fix this problem with the Washington income being turned on or off. So now all I got to do is I'm going to take this here times this, and I'm going to take that times the same, and I'm going to copy those down. So we're not earning until month 7, and that will change, just so you can see that will change. If I come in here and change this to 12, you see that I'm not earning in this column until month 13 is when I start getting my money. Okay, so just to prove that that logic is working properly. All right, so now what we got to do is we got to go back here and we got to fix one other thing, because our gross monthly is referencing it's referencing this P column when it needs to reference the R. So we'll change the P to an R, and then we're going to change the Q. Wait, did I mess something up? Yeah, we're going to change the Q to an S. The Q is now an S. Okay, so this, just so you can see it, it's correct. We're in Arkansas this whole time. We're making the 1733. We eventually get the raise to 1820. And then we have our move, which is shown here with the moving expense right here. Okay? And for the whole time we're in Arkansas, because we previously just changed it to a 1, our moving expenses, monthly expenses in Arkansas are $1 a month. So we're saving the difference between this minus that. Actually, this minus this minus that. It gives us this number. And we're doing our cash balance accrual. So we need to fix this, make sure that that's correct. So we're earning money the whole time we're in Arkansas. We reached the threshold, right? Okay, something's wrong with that switch now, because we were required to have 998.32. And we moved when we got to 87.29. So let's check our move date switch. The move month is here. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so we did pick up the the cash balance, but we immediately spent it here on our moving expenses. So we'll call this good enough. We won't fuss over this. We're just going to move forward and keep moving. Okay? All right. So then we get to Washington for the first 6 months, as per the model. We get no money, but we still have to spend money to do our travel, and we still have to spend money on our monthly expenses. And as I mentioned before, we're cash flow negative here quite a bit, and our balance comes down quickly, very quickly. And at the end of 6 months in Washington, we're in the hole. We got nothing left. We're beyond spent out on all our money. And this is precisely the reason that I'm encouraging you, Kay, to go through this modeling exercise, because this will let you see where the weaknesses are in the plan. Okay? So, in addition to that, we have a deficit when we get to Washington and after we get a job to the tune of $201 per month. So we're going to continue to go further in the hole just by virtue of the fact that we don't have enough income to break even. Okay? And this can be resolved maybe with some extra hours, maybe with a side job, working overtime, reducing expenses. I don't know, getting a third roommate. I don't know what this looks like. Are you going to eat ramen noodles until you get more money? This is something you'll have to weigh out as you go through the exercise. But the point here is that it's all very black and white. I have a saying: the math does not lie. Okay, we may not like the results, but if we do the math correctly, it's going to show us exactly what this picture looks like. Okay, so this is good information to know. And then the last thing we wanted to do was going to be with this column here is the column where we figure out when can we move. Oh, I have an easier way to do this, much easier. Okay. If this number over here is equal to a 0, then I'm going to take sorry. If this number over here in the test column is equal to a 0, then we're going to. This thing is sassing me. Okay, plus if equals 0, comma, that plus 1, comma, 0. Okay, here we go. So it's adding up every time there's a month where we didn't move. It's adding up, ticking up until it gets to the number 7, and then ultimately, my goal here was to take the maximum of that column. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm just going to cut this off at 97. What's going on is I don't have my formulas on the other columns. I don't have them copied down far enough. So we're going to say, well, we're just going to do this. We're going to say the max is up based on up to column 90. Okay. So now what's happened here is it's returning a value of 7 based on how many months it took us to get to a move. And what I'm going to do here, right here, I'm going to add another field, and I'm going to put here in big uppercase letters for you here, K, moving day, or moving, we'll call it moving month. Okay, and then I'm going to reference this back to that other thing over here. And here's the reason I've done it, because I know this is the ultimate goal here, is to get to the move, and by doing this in this way, you can see immediately when we change a value. For instance, if I go from making $10 an hour to $20 an hour, okay, I instantly see that my moving month has moved from 7 months to 4 months. Okay, now be conservative with how you approach this, and put real world values in here. Don't just change the numbers until you get the answer you want, but know that you can see very quickly what the result is by having this here, and that's the reason I've got it there for you. Similarly, you'll recall here we had this originally. This was $11.50. Okay, that's as the monthly rent cost. If that's the case, it takes me 3 months longer to get to the point where I can save up. Never mind the fact that when we get there, we're going to be out of money very quickly. And very quickly going into a spiral, because we're not losing $200 a month, we're losing $700 a month. Okay. So this is the purpose of the exercise, and we can get in here and we can play with these different numbers and see what the outcome would be in different scenarios. For instance, if gas price changed, or if we got better than a 5% wage increase, or we worked 45 hours a week both here and there. We can put all these numbers in here to our heart's content. We can change virtually anything in this left set of columns here and see what the result would be. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to circle back here and help you remember in our current situation and our future situation, it's all about increasing income and reducing expenses so that we have net cash flow in our favor as much as possible. That will help us more quickly get to the point where we can move, and will also better help us to sustain when we get where we want to go. And I have a concern based on what I'm seeing with the living cost here and the kind of pay rate that I think you can expect to make in Washington, that you're going to be cash flow deficit. In fact, we can see here, well, let's go back and put this to what we had before. Excuse me. We have the roommate back now, so we're at 575, and I can go through this exercise here, like what would I have to make to get this thing in the positive. I'm actually quite a bit higher here, so let's see. Maybe we can get there just with a $1 an hour raise. Not quite. So if we get from $10 to $13 an hour, you can see here we're cash flow positive again. Something went awry here. This has to do with the delay with this cost here. This is actually hitting a little too soon. Okay, so I'm not gonna sweat that too terribly much, but know that that's what's going on with this little dip in the balance. It's because of this moving cost. We could deal with this in a couple different ways, but that's what you're seeing is the moving cost change. So keep your eye on earning opportunities. This could be a side hustle thing. It could be a chance to get a promotion at your work. It could be working extra hours. And this applies not just to the Arkansas situation, but the Washington situation. And watch your expenses, because this is going to be key to increasing the difference. You want your income to far outpace your expenses, not just in Arkansas, but when you get where you're going, because this is what's going to allow you to have the ability to stay firmly both feet planted on the ground. Okay? And then the final point, I encourage you to really watch your milestones. Set some little micro goals. Maybe every time you save another $2,000, you're going to reward yourself. I don't know what that might be. You're going to go out with your buddies and have a nice dinner, or do something nice for yourself. Use maybe one of these little thermometer charts on the wall where you fill in the thermometer with red or whatever you want to do, so you can track your goal, because only if you're seeing your progress on a more frequent basis than when you get to the end, are you going to feel good about having made those little victories and feel good that you're tracking towards your goal, and you can start to see the finish line. One other thought I was going to throw in here, it seems to me that there's a lot of, we'll call this educated guessing in the Washington side of the puzzle. And yes, we can Google stuff and figure things out. But one thing that I think would be a good investment of your time, and it would also delay your trip or your move by a month or so, is to consider taking a little vacation where you actually go out to Washington. Maybe in advance of going, you can pick out 3 cities that look really good, and you can go not just for the purpose of enjoying the state of Washington and seeing what it's like, but figure out what areas you think would be a nice place to live, and more importantly, what areas would be reasonably affordable for living and also offer you the best earning potential in this kind of thing. So this is something you might give some thought to, because I think only firsthand personal experience is going to be key for the amount you would invest. Let's say $300 or $400 in airfare plus a couple nights in a hotel and $20 a day for food costs. You would get really nice information to put in here, you could feel more confident about the numbers that you've populated here. Because the reality is, if you guess low here, you're just delaying the discovery that you're headed back to Arkansas, or something has to give before you have to pack up your bags and leave Washington. I hope this was helpful, Kay, and thank you again, FK, for submitting the question. This is exactly why we're here. I very much appreciate the chance to work on this today. Here again, my name is Max, and I run a Twitch show. The address is there in the bottom of your screen, www.twitch.tv/max_sense. On that show, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, we get into questions just like this, but that's your opportunity to participate in the discussion, ask questions, maybe even come up with a new topic that we could present a YouTube video personalized just for you. So anybody and everybody is encouraged to attend the 7 p.m. Central Standard Time show on twitch.tv. Finally, Twitter is a great way to reach out to me. Right there in the top left of your screen, Sense at SenseMax, CENTS Max on Twitter. And then Instagram, of course, but that's more so just so you can get a little idea of what I'm up to personally. That will be it for this week. Hope to see you Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, good luck to you, Kay. Thank you again, FK. Y'all have a great week. We will see you Tuesday night at 7 Central. Take care.